Maud Lipscombe was a 23-year-old cigarette maker from Camberwell in South London. She came from a poor family, so this is quite possibly the only photograph of her that exists. There's no way of knowing if she ever saw it, as it formed part of her official medical record. It was taken when she was admitted to the Manor Asylum in Epsom on the 19th of June 1901, suffering, according to her father, from the effects of fright and overwork. She had bruises on the backs of her legs that were unexplained. She refused to answer any questions, saying simply, "I can't tell you," in response. When she arrived in Epsom, it was a prosperous market town in the countryside. The purchase of the nearby Horton estate by the London County Council to construct 5 asylums for the capital's mentally ill had not been popular with influential local people. The Manor Asylum had admitted its first patients in 1899, and Horton Asylum next door was brand new. Maud was one of over 90% of the asylum's patients classed as pauper lunatics, for whom the authorities were expected to care. It's likely she'd never been outside London. The hospital's grand original manor house and mature landscape grounds must have seemed like a different world from her life of hardship and struggle on the outskirts of the city. Maud's 19 years in the manor take up 4 pages of a huge leather-bound casebook. To start with, the entries are weekly, then monthly, then annual. They tell the sad story of her gradual decline and how the staff did their best with the minimal treatment that was available at the time. She disappears from the records in 1920 when she moved to Horton Asylum, where she may well have spent the rest of her life. Maud was diagnosed with dementia praecox, a term that was used at the turn of the century for what we would now call schizophrenia. It was considered to be incurable, so there was no hope of her ever leaving the asylum. Maud's image stayed with me for a long time after I read her story. She looks defiant and self-possessed with an enigmatic half-smile. The picture seems at odds with the description of her removing her clothes and throwing herself about when she first arrived. Was she joking or delusional when she told staff her head was made of glass? The casebooks describe her as noisy, but after she entered the asylum, nothing she said was recorded. One of her nurses wrote, "Little sense can be made of what she says." No letters or diaries have been found, so Maud's words and Maud's experiences are completely lost to us. Maud's image and this question of first-hand experience inspired me to learn more about the real people behind the medical records. Over 50 first-hand recordings detailing people's memories of the hospitals from the 1950s onwards were collected in 2017 as part of Keeping Us in Mind, a community oral history project funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and delivered in partnership with Surrey History Centre, Bourne Hall Museum in Ewell and Epsom-based mental health charity Love Me Love My Mind. The project aimed to capture and interpret the stories of those who lived and worked in the hospitals while they were still within living memory. Keeping Us in Mind showed that the history and meaning of these vast institutions is as varied as the staff and patients who inhabited them. For some people, they were a place of work where their parents had also earned a living, a source of childhood treats and somewhere they socialised, fell in love and met their future spouse. For others, they offered a safe haven, however imperfect, where they could gain some respite from mental illness, or the first step on the road to recovery. But for some people who were treated there, they were the location of painful experiences they preferred to forget. The experiences of individuals were very different, but they all took place within the same institutions occupying the same square mile. The Epsom cluster played an important part in the history of mental health care in this country, and our social history more generally. When the hospitals closed, a way of life that had lasted for almost a century came to a sudden end. Today, most of the buildings have been demolished to make way for new housing, but there are still traces in the landscape of North Epsom if you look closely. The last remaining place of worship in the cluster, Horton Chapel, will soon be opening as an arts centre with a permanent exhibition about the history of the hospitals and the people connected with them. See hortonchapelproject.org for more details. You can read more in my book, The Epsom Cluster, Voices from Europe's largest psychiatric hospital complex, published by Amberley Publishing in 2019.